The child drew a picture of his office, and one detail left him shaking. The hum of the city was barely audible from the 32nd floor of the Carrington Global building. Everything about the office was pristine: glass walls, sleek desks, modern furniture, and the polished marble floor that echoed every step like a whisper of authority. It was just another Thursday until she arrived. Her name was Emily, 8 years old. Tiny, with a mop of wavy chestnut hair and wide green eyes that sparkled with curiosity. She walked in quietly, clinging to the hand of Ms. Thornton, the head of HR, who looked puzzled herself. "This is Emily," she said to the receptionist, glancing down at the girl. "She's here for, well, it's a bit unusual. She asked to come up here and draw something." Jessica, the receptionist, raised an eyebrow. "She asked to come here? To the executive floor?" "She said her mum used to work here. That she wanted to see where. Her mom passed away recently." Thornton hesitated, then added softly, "I didn't have the heart to say no." The girl was polite, her voice soft as she asked Jessica for colored pencils and a few sheets of paper. No one objected. It seemed innocent enough. While meetings buzzed behind closed doors, Emily sat on the lounge chair near the window, legs crossed, head bent over her drawing. No one paid much attention at first. Until just after noon, CEO Daniel Whitmore stepped out of the boardroom. He was tall, silver-haired, and impeccably dressed. A man with a commanding presence and eyes that missed nothing. When he spotted the girl, he paused, his brow furrowing slightly. "She's with HR," Jessica explained quickly. "Just drawing something. Her mom used to work here." Daniel gave a polite nod, but something made him walk toward her. He crouched to her level. "Hello there." Emily looked up and smiled. "Hi. I'm almost done. Do you want to see?" Before he could respond, she handed him the paper. It was a sketch of an office, his office. But it wasn't just a child's interpretation. It was detailed. Too detailed. The exact arrangement of furniture, the color of the books on the shelf, even the small crack on the edge of his wooden desk, hidden from plain view unless you stood at a certain angle. Daniel's heart began to thud. He stared at the paper. "Who showed you this room?" "No one," Emily said, twirling a strand of her hair. "I just remembered it. I used to come here when I was little." Daniel's fingers tightened on the paper. "You've been in my office before?" Emily nodded casually. "With my mum. She said I was too young to remember." Something inside Daniel shifted. Ice gripped his chest. "What was your mother's name?" he asked, voice hoarse. Emily paused. "Anna. Anna Caldwell." Daniel's face drained of color. The name hit him like a ghost whispering through the years. He dropped the paper. Daniel turned away abruptly, his hand trembling as he reached for the edge of a nearby desk to steady himself. He couldn't let anyone see him like this. Not his assistant, not the board members drifting from the conference room, and certainly not the little girl with those haunting green eyes. He mumbled something to Jessica, he wasn't even sure what, and stepped back into his office, closing the door behind him with a soft click. For a moment, he just stood there, staring at the crack in the desk, the one Emily had drawn so precisely. Anna Caldwell. That name hadn't crossed his lips in almost 9 years. Not since the day she walked out of his life without explanation, without goodbye. Just gone. At the time, she had been a junior analyst, brilliant, ambitious, and with a laugh that could melt the tension of any boardroom. They had kept their relationship a secret. Office romances were frowned upon, and Daniel had always been careful, always in control. But Anna made him reckless. She had vanished suddenly, resigning via email. No farewell meeting, no request for a recommendation. Just silence. And he, shocked, confused, and still stinging from her disappearance, had let her go without chasing after her. Until now. He dropped into his leather chair, the drawing still clenched in his hand. He studied every inch of it again, trying to find some logical explanation. Maybe she had told Emily stories. Maybe she described this place in detail. Maybe Emily was just gifted. But no. That crack in the desk, no one knew about it. He opened a drawer and pulled out an old, worn envelope, one he had tucked away in the back, too painful to throw out. Inside was a single photograph. Anna standing at the edge of a lake, smiling at the camera. He stared at her eyes, her nose, her cheekbones. Then he remembered Emily's face. It couldn't be. Could it? He picked up the office phone and dialed internal HR. "I need Anna Caldwell's file. Employment records, emergency contacts, anything you have. And I need it now. Priority." The assistant on the other end hesitated. "Sir, I think most of her records were archived years ago. I'll check." "Unarchive them," he said, his voice sharp. "Now." He hung up and glanced back at the drawing. One detail caught his attention, something he hadn't noticed before. In the corner of the sketched window, Emily had drawn two tiny stick figures, a tall man with silver hair and a small girl holding his hand. He leaned forward, heart racing. There was a word written above them in crooked letters. Daddy. He sank back in his chair, breath shallow. Every carefully constructed wall he had built over the years began to crack. Emily wasn't just a visitor. She was a message from a past he thought he had buried, and she had come with a truth he wasn't ready to face. Outside the office, Emily sat quietly, now coloring another picture, oblivious to the chaos unraveling behind Daniel's door. Ms. Thornton had returned to her department, trusting Jessica to watch over the child, but the receptionist couldn't help glancing at the office door every few seconds, her curiosity piqued by the CEO's reaction. Inside, Daniel paced. The photo of Anna still lay on the desk beside Emily's drawing. He picked up the receiver again and dialed an external number this time, his personal investigator, someone he hadn't used in years. "I need you to find someone," Daniel said the moment the man answered. "Anna Caldwell, former employee, died recently according to a child who claims to be her daughter. I need to know everything. When she passed, where she lived, where the child is staying now, everything." "I'll get started right away," came the professional reply. Daniel hung up and stared at the skyline outside his office. The city stretched endlessly, but for the first time in years, it felt small, trapped, like the past was circling in. He sat again, trying to rationalize it. Anna could have had a child. That much was possible. But why didn't she ever tell him? Why disappear? Why keep the child a secret? Unless she had a reason. The intercom buzzed. Jessica's voice came through hesitantly. "Sir, the little girl asked if she could give you another drawing." Daniel blinked. "Send her in." The door opened slowly. Emily stepped in, her small hand clutching another piece of paper. She walked up to the desk and held it out, her green eyes locking with his. "I made this for you," she said simply. Daniel took it. This drawing was different. It showed a house, modest, cozy, with a garden in the front. A woman stood in the window, clearly Anna. A little girl stood at the gate, and behind them, in the sky, a heart-shaped cloud hovered above the scene. He was speechless. "Is this where you live now?" he asked quietly. Emily shook her head. "No, that's where we used to live, before Mommy went to sleep." Daniel swallowed hard. "Who do you live with now?" She looked down. "A lady named Claire. She's my foster person. She's nice, but she doesn't know Mommy worked here." Foster. That word hit Daniel like a blow to the chest. His jaw clenched. Anna had passed, and no one had told him. No obituary he ever saw, no call. And now, her child, possibly his child, was in foster care. "Did your mother ever tell you about your father?" he asked carefully. Emily nodded slowly. "She said he was very busy and very important. But he didn't know about me. She said he would have come if he had." The room spun slightly. Daniel rose from his chair and walked around the desk, kneeling in front of her. "Emily, would you like to come back here again tomorrow?" Her face lit up. "Can I?" "Yes," he said, his voice trembling. "You can come as often as you like." Because this time, he wasn't going to walk away. That evening, after the office had emptied and the lights dimmed to their nighttime hum, Daniel remained at his desk, The two drawings spread before him like sacred texts. He stared at them for a long time, his thoughts trapped in a loop of regret and wonder. He barely noticed the knock at the door. It was Jessica, holding a thin manila folder. "HR found what you asked for," she said, stepping inside. "It's not much. Most of it was archived a long time ago. No digital records." "Thank you," he murmured, accepting the folder with careful hands. Once alone again, he opened it. Sparse documentation, a resume, a copy of Anna's resignation letter, a few HR notes. But tucked in the back was something unexpected. A scanned emergency contact form. Daniel stared at the name listed. Claire Vernon, the same woman Emily had mentioned. He grabbed his phone and searched the name, cross-referencing addresses with the one noted in the form. It led to a quiet neighborhood on the city's edge, middle-class, mostly single-family homes. He copied the address and stood. He couldn't wait. He had to know. By the time he reached the neighborhood, the sun had dipped below the horizon. The streetlights flickered to life as he parked and walked to the front door of a small blue house. His heartbeat echoed in his ears. He knocked. A moment passed, then the door opened a crack. A woman in her 40s, curly hair pulled into a loose bun, peeked out. "Yes." "Miss Vernon?" Daniel asked, clearing his throat. "My name is Daniel Whitmore. I believe you're fostering a child named Emily Caldwell." Her eyes widened, suspicious. "Why are you asking?" "I met her today. She came to my office. She said her mother used to work there. Her name was Anna Caldwell." Claire stepped outside, closing the door gently behind her. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "She wasn't supposed to go there. I didn't even know she'd left school." "I think," Daniel said softly, "that she might be my daughter." Claire stared at him in stunned silence. "She drew a picture," he continued, "of my office, of a detail no one else could have known. And she said Anna told her I didn't know." Claire's shoulders sagged. She rubbed her temple, her expression torn. "Anna never told anyone who the father was, not even me. I was her friend. We worked together once. When she got sick last year, she asked me to look after Emily. She didn't want the state involved, but when she passed, there were no legal papers, no will. Emily ended up in the system." Daniel looked past her toward the house. A child's shadow moved behind the curtains. "I want to help," he said. I want to be part of her life." Claire hesitated. "She's been through a lot. You can't just show up and disappear again." "I won't," he said, with more certainty than he had felt in years. "Not this time." Claire searched his face and finally, slowly, she nodded. "Then come back tomorrow. We'll talk." Daniel didn't sleep that night. He lay awake in his penthouse apartment, staring at the ceiling as the city murmured far below. Every moment played on repeat. The drawing, Emily's eyes, the way she said "Daddy" without even knowing what it meant. He couldn't shake the feeling that the universe had given him one more chance, and that this time he wouldn't be forgiven if he blew it. The next morning, he arrived at the office before sunrise. He cancelled his meetings, postponed his schedule, and instructed Jessica to clear the day. Then he sat in his office with the drawings again, this time carefully placing them in a leather folder. When the hour struck 9, he was already standing in front of Claire Vernon's house, dressed not like a CEO, but like a man trying to be something else, someone real. Claire opened the door without surprise. She stepped aside to let him in. Emily sat at the kitchen table eating cereal and humming to herself. When she saw Daniel, her face lit up. "You came back," she said with a smile. He knelt beside her. "I said I would, didn't I?" She nodded, then held up another drawing, this time of 3 figures standing under a big tree, 2 adults, 1 child. "This is us," she said. Claire watched from a distance, arms crossed, her face unreadable. After breakfast, she pulled Daniel aside into the living room. "She likes you," she said plainly. "She doesn't usually open up so fast. But you need to understand, she's been through trauma, losing her mother, changing homes. This isn't just about biology. It's about showing up." Daniel nodded. "I'm prepared to do what it takes." Claire gave him a long look, then spoke carefully. There's something I didn't tell you yesterday. Anna wrote a letter for Emily. She left it with me to give her when she turned 10, but maybe it's time. She disappeared into a back room, returning with a sealed envelope. The handwriting on the front was delicate and familiar. For Emily, when she's ready. Daniel stared at it as if it might burn his hands. Claire placed it in his palm. "Read it," she said softly. "Alone. Then you'll understand more." Back in his car, Daniel opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a single page. "My sweet Emily," it began. "If you're reading this, it means I'm not with you anymore. I'm sorry for that. You deserve a world full of love. You deserve to know the truth." As he read, the words poured into him like water into dry earth. Anna spoke of love, of regret, of a life lived in fear and protection. She never stopped loving Daniel, but she was terrified of what their relationship could have meant for him, his career, his reputation, his family. She left to give him freedom and to protect Emily. "Your father doesn't know you exist. Not because he didn't care, but because I never told him. But I believe one day he'll find you. And when he does, I hope he sees in your eyes everything I saw, strength, kindness, and all the love I never got to give." Daniel finished the letter with tears streaming down his face, because in that moment, he didn't need a DNA test. He already knew. The following days unfolded like a delicate dream Daniel was afraid to wake from. He visited Claire's home daily, sometimes just for an hour, sometimes for longer. He brought storybooks, puzzles, and even a potted plant Emily could keep by her window. "Like the ones in your office," she had said. Each visit, the bond between them deepened in ways that transcended explanation. Emily didn't question it. To her, it simply made sense. Daniel was kind, patient, and he listened, really listened. He didn't talk down to her. He remembered the details of her drawings and laughed at her corny jokes. She started calling him Mr. Daniel, then D, and once by accident, Dad. She had quickly covered her mouth afterward, but Daniel had only smiled, his heart thundering in his chest. He didn't correct her. He never would. But beyond those warm moments, a storm brewed beneath the surface. At the office, word had begun to spread. Daniel's prolonged absences and mysterious new guest had caught the attention of the board. One executive in particular, Richard Hayes, the company's COO, had been watching closely. Richard was ambitious and had long suspected Daniel would soon retire or step back. Any sign of weakness was an opportunity. When Daniel returned to work the following Monday, Richard was waiting in his office. "You've been busy," Richard said smoothly, folding his hands across his lap. "People are starting to notice." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "I wasn't aware my schedule required your approval." Richard offered a tight smile. "We all know you're under pressure, Daniel, and with the IPO approaching, stability is everything. Investors don't like surprises." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "Get to the point." Richard's smile faded. "There's a rumor that the little girl visiting the office is your daughter. If that's true, and if you've been hiding it, well, that could raise some difficult questions." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "She's not a secret. She's a child who lost her mother." Richard didn't flinch. "Then maybe it's time to be transparent. You've always been the face of this company. If there's a shift in your personal circumstances, the board deserves to know." Daniel's voice dropped to a calm, icy tone. "I'll tell the board when I'm ready, not a moment before. And if you think for a second that I'm going to let gossip dictate how I handle a child's life, you're mistaken." Richard stood slowly. "Just trying to protect the company, Daniel, and your legacy." As the door closed behind him, Daniel exhaled slowly. He had made a promise to Emily and to Anna's memory. But the more the world crept in, the board, the investors, the media potential, the more complicated everything became. Later that evening, back at Claire's house, Emily handed him another drawing. This one showed a courtroom, with Daniel and Emily standing side by side. Above them was a banner, "Family Wins." Daniel clutched the drawing, a sudden chill running through him. He hadn't told her about Richard, but somehow Emily already understood. That night, Daniel sat in his apartment staring out at the city, her drawing propped beside him on the coffee table. The phrase, "family wins," repeated in his mind like a mantra, both a hope and a warning. He had kept his life controlled for decades, his image, his decisions, his secrets. Now an 8-year-old had shaken all of it loose. He poured himself a glass of scotch but barely touched it. Instead, he pulled out his laptop and opened a blank document. He began typing a letter. Not to the board, not to the press. To Emily. He wrote slowly, choosing each word carefully. He told her about the day he first met her mother, how nervous Anna had been on her first day, and how she'd spilled coffee on the company's VP within the first hour. He told Emily how Anna had laughed through her embarrassment, how that laugh had stayed in his head for days. He wrote about the late nights, the stolen moments in quiet corners of the office, the dreams they shared but never said out loud. He didn't explain why Anna left. He didn't know the full truth himself, but he promised Emily that whatever had kept them apart before would never stand in the way again. He signed it simply, "With all the love I never knew I had, your father, Daniel." He printed it and placed it in an envelope, planning to give it to her when the time was right. The next morning, Daniel arrived at Claire's home earlier than usual. Claire was in the garden, tending to flowers. Emily was still inside, brushing her teeth. Daniel approached quietly. "I want to talk to a lawyer," he said. Claire straightened, brushing dirt off her gloves. "You're serious then?" He nodded. "I want to establish paternity, and if it's confirmed, I want to take guardianship, legally." Claire's eyes searched his face. "You're ready for that kind of commitment?" "I missed 8 years," he said. "I won't miss a single day more." Claire exhaled slowly. "There's something you should know." Anna, she was scared of her family. Her parents disowned her when she got pregnant. If they find out Emily exists, they might try to interfere, claim custody. Daniel stiffened. "Do they know where she is?" "I don't think so," Claire replied. "But if your name goes on the record, they'll find out," he finished. Claire nodded. "They're powerful, wealthy, resentful. If they come for Emily, it won't be about love. It'll be about control." Daniel clenched his jaw. "Then I'll fight them." He pulled out his phone and called his attorney. "I need a full custody consultation today." After the call, Emily bounded outside, her backpack bouncing behind her. "Are we going to your office today?" Daniel knelt down. "Not today. I have some important errands, grown-up stuff." Emily pouted slightly. "Okay. Will you still come back later?" He touched her cheek, smiling. "Always." But as he looked into her eyes, a flicker of anxiety stirred deep in his gut. Because love wasn't the only force waking up from the past. That afternoon, Daniel met with his legal team in a discreet corner office across town, far from the Carrington building, far from curious eyes. His longtime attorney, Marla Griggs, had handled everything from mergers to media crises. But as he laid out the story, Anna's disappearance, Emily's drawings, the letter from Anna, the quiet foster arrangement, Marla's expression shifted from professional focus to genuine concern. "This isn't just a custody case," she said, lacing her fingers on the desk. "You're stepping into a minefield." "I don't care," Daniel replied. "She's my daughter." "You have no legal standing yet," Marla reminded him. "No DNA test, no birth certificate listing you as the father. Claire is technically her guardian, and even that's temporary under the state's eyes. If anyone contests it, Anna's parents, for example, this becomes very public, very fast." Daniel exhaled. "Then let's make it official. I want a paternity test, whatever paperwork we need. I'll pay for private mediation if needed." Marla nodded. "We'll need Claire's consent for the test and Emily's cooperation. Then we prepare to petition the court for full custody, or at the very least, shared guardianship." "I want full," Daniel said without hesitation. "She deserves stability, not to be yanked around by people who never wanted her." Marla hesitated. "There's one more thing, Daniel. If you become her legal guardian, everything about your relationship could go public. Reporters dig. if someone finds out she's your biological child, you'll be facing questions about why you never claimed her. And so will she. I'll protect her, he said quietly, no matter what it costs me. Later that evening, he returned to Claire's home with a calm, deliberate tone. He explained the legal steps gently and asked for Claire's support in getting the paternity test done. Claire listened in silence, her face unreadable. When he finished, she stood and walked to the kitchen window. "You really love her, don't you?" "I didn't think I was capable of this kind of love," he answered. "But yes, I do." Claire turned back. "Then, we'll do the test." The following morning at a private clinic, Daniel and Emily both gave samples. Emily was curious but didn't ask many questions. She trusted him. That was enough. They left the clinic and stopped for lunch at a quiet park. Emily sat beside him, eating fries and humming a tune she made up on the spot. Then, out of nowhere, she turned to him and asked, "Did you love my mommy?" Daniel blinked. "Yes, very much." Emily smiled and looked back at her food. "I think she loved you too, even when she was sad." His throat tightened. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the envelope, the letter he had written. "I have something for you," he said, "but you don't have to read it now." She looked at the envelope, then tucked it carefully into her backpack. "I'll keep it safe," she whispered. Daniel smiled. But back at the clinic, someone else had seen their names on the register, someone who hadn't forgotten Anna Caldwell, or her secrets. 3 days later, Daniel received a call from the clinic. The results were in. His assistant handed him the sealed envelope without a word, sensing the weight of the moment. Daniel shut his office door, sat at his desk and held the envelope in his hands, just staring at it. The envelope was light, ordinary, but inside it held something that would redefine every part of his life. He opened it slowly, unfolded the papers, and scanned the lines. Probability of paternity: 99%. His breath caught. A strange mix of joy, grief, and fierce resolve surged through him. It was real. It was no longer a suspicion or a hopeful truth. Emily was his daughter, his blood, his legacy, his second chance. Without hesitation, he called Marla. "We proceed," he said. The legal motion was filed the same afternoon. Petitions were signed, and a family court date was set. But just as Daniel was preparing to inform Claire, a storm arrived at her doorstep. A black SUV pulled up to the curb. 2 sharply dressed individuals, one man, one woman, stepped out. Claire, watering her flowers, looked up warily. "Can I help you?" "Claire Vernon?" the man asked. "We're here on behalf of Harold and Margaret Caldwell." Claire's stomach dropped. They've recently become aware that their granddaughter, Emily Caldwell, is currently in your care. They're requesting immediate visitation and intend to pursue full custody. Claire's jaw tightened. They've never met her. "That's precisely why they're intervening now," the woman said. "They feel it's in the child's best interest to be raised by her biological family." Claire didn't answer. She just turned and walked back inside, slamming the door behind her. She called Daniel immediately. "They know," she said. "They're here. They've lawyered up." Daniel was already standing. "I'll handle it." But the Caldwells weren't just grieving grandparents. They were old money, powerful, ruthless. And they had political ties and legal resources that could bury a man in paperwork and rumors overnight. By the next morning, headlines began appearing on finance blogs and whisper columns. Carrington CEO in secret paternity scandal. Emily Caldwell, the hidden heir. Daniel sat in his office scrolling through the damage. Some of it was speculation, some was astonishingly accurate. The name Caldwell had triggered interest in Anna's old family connections, donors, lobbyists, society page darlings from 2 decades ago. Marla called him in a rush. "This is moving faster than expected. The Caldwells are filing for an emergency injunction. They're claiming Claire was an unfit guardian and that you used corporate power to interfere with the child's placement." "They're grasping," Daniel muttered. "They're dangerous," she corrected. "You need to go public. Now." Tell your story before they twist it further. That evening, Daniel met Claire in her living room. They won't stop, Claire said quietly. I can see it in their eyes. I won't let them take her, Daniel said, but we have to fight smart. He paused. I want to hold a press conference with Emily, with you. Let the world see what family really looks like. Claire hesitated, and from the hallway, Emily's small voice echoed softly. I want to tell the world who my daddy is. The press conference was set for Friday morning, held at a modest community center, rather than the Carrington corporate tower. Daniel insisted on it. He didn't want this moment framed as a business maneuver. It wasn't about damage control. It was about truth, about family. The media caught wind fast. By sunrise, reporters and photographers had gathered, whispering and speculating, their lenses focused on the small podium where a single microphone stood. Inside the green room, Daniel adjusted his tie in the mirror, but his hands trembled. Claire sat beside Emily, brushing the girl's hair with gentle strokes. You don't have to do this, Claire whispered. Emily looked up at her. I want to. Daniel knelt beside them, holding the envelope she had kept safe, the letter he wrote her. If you want, I can read it instead. Emily shook her head. No, I want to say something myself. At precisely 9 a.m., there the doors opened and Daniel stepped out first. The cameras flashed instantly. Reporters surged forward, but the room hushed the moment they saw Emily walking in behind him, holding his hand tightly. Daniel took the podium, steadying himself. Good morning, he began. Thank you for coming. I never imagined I would be standing here under these circumstances, but life has a way of showing us what matters. He paused, looking at Emily. 8 years ago, someone I loved disappeared from my life. Hannah Caldwell. She left without telling me she was carrying my child. Last week I met my daughter for the first time. Murmurs swept the room. I didn't know. If I had, I would have moved mountains to be in her life. And now that I do know, nothing will keep me from her again. Emily stepped forward, her hands shaking a little as she unfolded a small paper. My name is Emily, she said, her voice soft but clear. My mommy told me stories about a man who was smart and kind and had silver hair. She said he didn't know I was born, but if he found me, he'd love me. She looked up at Daniel, smiling. And she was right. The room erupted in soft gasps. Cameras clicked faster now, but no one shouted, no one interrupted. For a moment, it was just them, the little girl and the man who had missed nearly a decade but refused to miss another day. Claire joined them on stage. Daniel put an arm around both of them. We are not here to fight over a child, Daniel said. We are here to protect her peace, to give her a life full of love, not lawyers, and no matter who tries to interfere, this little girl is not a pawn. As they left the stage, a reporter called out, Mr. Whitmore, what if the Caldwells respond? Daniel paused, then turned back. Let them. I've already won what matters. But as the family walked off stage into the bright light of morning, halfway across the city, Margaret Caldwell watched the conference on a gilded television screen, her lips pressed into a thin line. Beside her, Harold Caldwell stood without blinking. She's made him soft, Margaret said coldly. Harold poured himself a drink. No, he muttered. She's made him dangerous. The Caldwell estate sat on the edge of the city, hidden behind wrought iron gates and centuries-old hedges. It was the kind of place that clung to tradition like armor. Margaret Caldwell paced the drawing room, each click of her heels sharp against the marble floor. The press conference had played on every news station, and public sentiment had shifted overnight. She's turned him into a hero, she hissed. Harold sat in his leather armchair, swirling a glass of brandy. Of course she did. A poor orphan child, a repentant billionaire father. It's a perfect fairy tale. It's a scandal, Margaret snapped. One that threatens everything. The Caldwell name will not be tied to a child born out of wedlock, especially not one raised by a secretary and a man who... She's our granddaughter, Margaret, Harold said quietly, cutting her off. Margaret stopped pacing. Her eyes narrowed. You're forgetting yourself. No, Harold said. I'm remembering what we lost. Margaret said nothing for a long moment. Then, with icy control, she walked to her desk and pressed a button on the intercom. "Call Attorney Wentworth. Tell him we proceed with full custody. No delays." At the Carrington building, Daniel stood at the window of his office, watching as reporters still hovered near the gates below. His phone vibrated. It was Marla. "They've filed," she said. "Emergency custody motion. Full custody petition. The Caldwells are arguing that you and Claire acted illegally in hiding the child, that Claire was never a licensed foster parent, and that your sudden appearance as father is a calculated media move." Daniel let out a breath through clenched teeth. "They're trying to paint us as manipulators, and they're very good at it," Marla said. "The Caldwells have connections in the judge's circle. You'll need more than DNA. You'll need character witnesses, evidence. Proof that you're not just showing up because it's convenient now." Daniel's thoughts turned to the letter Anna had written, her words, her love, her decision to keep Emily hidden for fear of her own family. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out the original copy of the letter. "I think it's time the court hears Anna's voice," he said. Later that evening, he visited Claire's home again. Emily ran into his arms the moment he arrived, clutching her newest drawing. A garden with butterflies, a man in a suit kneeling in the dirt, planting flowers. "You said we'd plant one together," she reminded him. "We will," he smiled. "Next weekend, okay?" But Claire's expression was more guarded. "They've filed, haven't they?" she asked quietly, after Emily ran off to show Daniel her toy collection. He nodded. "They want full custody," he said, "and they'll do anything to get it." Claire's face tightened. "I've seen what those people are capable of." Daniel leaned in, his voice low and resolute. "Then we go to court." He didn't say the rest aloud. That if they lost, he might lose Emily all over again. The courtroom was grand in design, all mahogany panels and high windows that let in harsh light. It was the kind of place built to intimidate. Daniel sat at the front bench beside Marla, his suit crisp, his posture composed, but his heart felt anything but calm. Across the aisle sat the Caldwells, dressed in muted greys, their presence commanding and cold. Margaret's face was carved in stone, while Harold watched the proceedings with a detached intensity. Their legal team was stacked, 4 attorneys, all with folders thick enough to choke a filing cabinet. Claire sat behind Daniel, holding Emily's hand tightly. The little girl wore a navy blue dress and held her sketchpad in her lap, silent but watchful. She sensed the tension, though no one had explained it fully. The judge entered and took her seat, flipping briefly through the documents. "We are here to assess custody and guardianship of the minor child, Emily Caldwell, following petitions by Mr. Daniel Whitmore and Mr. and Mrs. Harold Caldwell." Marla stood, her voice clear. "Your Honor, Mr. Whitmore only recently became aware of the child's existence. DNA testing confirms his paternity. He is now pursuing full guardianship to give his daughter the home she deserves." The Caldwell attorney stood immediately. "Your Honor, the Caldwells are the child's only known blood relatives outside the petitioner. They had no knowledge of her birth and are deeply disturbed that the child was placed in the care of a non-relative with no legal certification. Mr. Whitmore, despite his wealth, has had no prior relationship with the child until 2 weeks ago." Marla rose again. "With respect, the child has expressed clear emotional attachment to Mr. Whitmore, and we have written testimony from the late Anna Caldwell confirming that she deliberately kept the child hidden for fear of her own parents." There was a pause. The judge looked up. "You have a letter from the mother?" "Yes, Your Honor," Marla said, stepping forward to submit it. "This was written before her death and entrusted to her friend, Claire Vernon." The judge accepted it and began reading. The courtroom held its breath. Daniel couldn't look away from the Caldwells. Margaret stared forward, her jaw tight, while Harold shifted slightly, almost a flinch. After several long minutes, the judge looked up. "This letter changes the context significantly," she said. "However, we still must consider what's in the best interest of the child. I will be requesting a psychological evaluation of all parties and a guardian ad litem appointed to represent Emily's welfare." Emily tugged on Claire's sleeve and whispered something. Claire nodded. "Your Honor," Claire said, standing, "with permission." Emily would like to say something. The courtroom murmured, but the judge raised a hand. "I'll allow it." Emily stood, holding her drawing pad. She walked slowly to the front, then turned it around. It showed 3 figures again: Daniel, Claire, and herself, holding hands beneath a heart-shaped tree. She looked at the judge, then said softly, "This is my family. Please don't take them away." Margaret's eyes flickered. Harold looked down, and for the first time silence became unbearable. The judge sat quietly for a moment, her fingers steepled as she studied Emily's drawing and the sincerity in the girl's eyes. Then she leaned back, exhaling slowly. "Thank you, Emily," she said gently. "You may return to your seat." Emily nodded and walked back to Claire, who pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. Daniel's heart ached watching them, but it was also filled with pride. His daughter, had more courage than most adults he knew. The judge turned her attention back to the legal teams. "We will proceed with the psychological assessments as planned," she said. "Each party will be evaluated within the week. A decision on temporary custody will be rendered after the guardian ad litem submits a report." She banged the gavel once, ending the session. As people began to shuffle out of the courtroom, Daniel stood and turned to Claire. "Thank you for letting her speak. That drawing, it said everything." Claire looked tired, but nodded. She wanted to. "I wasn't sure, but she said it was important." Then Daniel turned and came face to face with Harold Caldwell. The older man's expression was unreadable. For a moment they simply stared at each other. "She looks like Anna," Harold said quietly. Daniel nodded. "Yes, and she has her heart too." Harold studied him. "You're fighting hard for a girl you just met." "Because I should have known about her years ago," Daniel replied. "I can't change that, but I can make sure she's safe now." Harold hesitated. "You won't win easily. Margaret, she doesn't like to lose." "I'm not trying to win a case," Daniel said. "I'm trying to give my daughter a life." Harold gave a faint nod, then walked away, his shoulders heavier than when he arrived. Back at Claire's home that evening, Emily was unusually quiet. She sat on the couch beside Daniel, her head leaning against his arm. He held her hand gently, careful not to crowd her. "Did I do okay?" she asked after a long silence. "You did better than okay," he whispered. "You were brave. You told the truth. That's all anyone can ask." She looked up. "Will I have to live somewhere else?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "Not if I can help it." Claire walked in then, holding a letter. "This came today. It's from Anna's old college roommate. She saw the press conference. Said she has something important, something about Anna's will." Daniel's eyes widened. "Anna left a will?" Claire handed him the envelope. "Apparently, and she named you." Daniel opened it slowly, scanning the letter inside. The woman, a lawyer herself, confirmed that Anna had given her a sealed document 8 years ago. She had never opened it, per Anna's request. But seeing Emily and Daniel now, she believed it was time. "I'll have it couriered tomorrow," the letter said. "I think Anna wanted you to have this when you were ready, and I think you finally are." Daniel leaned back, heart racing. Somewhere, Anna had spoken one more truth, one that might shift the ground again. The next morning, Daniel waited by the front door of his apartment, checking his watch every few seconds. The courier finally arrived at 9:12 a.m. Handing him a small weathered envelope wrapped in legal plastic and bearing Anna's handwriting. The seal was still intact. He held it in his hands like it might shatter. The letter from Anna's college roommate had included a notarized statement confirming authenticity. Inside was Anna's will, 8 years old, drafted before Emily was born, but updated after her birth. Daniel opened it slowly, unfolding the delicate pages. It began simply, "This is the last will and testament of Anna Caldwell." He read every word, his breath catching as he came to the final section. Anna had named Claire Vernon as Emily's guardian in the event of her death, but only temporarily. If at any point The child's biological father, Daniel Whitmore, becomes aware of her existence and desires to take custody. It is my wish and legal instruction that full guardianship be transferred to him. Daniel exhaled, shaking. It was legal. It was binding. It was the one thing that could end this custody war if the court honored Anna's final wish. He immediately called Marla. "I have the will," he said. "It names me." She responded instantly. "Bring it to the office now. We'll file an emergency motion to present it in court. This changes everything." Later that day, Daniel arrived at Claire's house, the will tucked safely in a leather folder. He explained everything, how Anna had thought ahead, how she had still trusted him even after disappearing. Claire's eyes filled with tears. "She never stopped believing you'd come back." Daniel nodded slowly. "I wish I'd looked for her sooner." "She wouldn't let anyone find her," Claire whispered. "She was scared of her parents, of what they'd do to Emily if they ever found out. That's why she kept you a secret. Not because she didn't love you, but because she did." Daniel sat beside her, the weight of the years finally catching up. "They can't take Emily now, not with this." Claire took his hand. "Let's hope the judge agrees." 2 days later, the courtroom reconvened in an emergency session. The Caldwell's attorneys tried to delay, claiming the will's origins were questionable, but Marla presented the notarized verification and testimony from Anna's roommate. The judge read it silently, her expression unreadable. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm but firm. "This document changes the landscape of this case. It is clear that Anna Caldwell took measures to protect her daughter and to ensure her wishes were known in the event of her death." Margaret Caldwell stood suddenly. "Your Honor, Anna was manipulated. She was young. She didn't understand what she was giving away." "She understood perfectly," Daniel interrupted, rising to his feet. "And she made a choice to protect her daughter from a family that never accepted her." The judge silenced them both. "I will need time to review all the documentation, but unless there is legal proof of coercion or forgery, the court will uphold Anna Caldwell's will." The gavel fell again. Margaret's face darkened. Harold looked down, weary and quiet. Daniel turned and looked at Emily, who sat between Claire and Marla. She gave him a small, brave smile. It wasn't over yet, but the tide had turned. That night, Daniel sat alone in his apartment, the city's lights flickering like distant stars beyond the glass. The courtroom scene played again and again in his mind. Margaret's anger, Harold's silence, Emily's quiet strength. The will had shifted the case in his favor, but victory still hovered out of reach. Then his phone rang. It was Harold Caldwell. Daniel hesitated before answering. "Hello?" "Don't hang up," Harold said quickly. His voice was low, measured. "I'm not calling to threaten you." "Then why are you calling?" There was a pause. "Because I believe Anna made the right choice." Daniel stood and walked toward the window. "Does Margaret know you're calling me?" "No, and she wouldn't approve if she did." Harold sighed. "But I watched that girl walk into court and draw her family with crayons. I saw what Anna saw in you." Daniel was quiet. "I loved my daughter," Harold continued, "but I failed her. We both did. We made her believe love came with conditions. She ran from us, and she kept running until it killed her." Daniel swallowed hard. "I don't want to fail my granddaughter too," Harold added. "If the court grants you custody, I won't challenge it. I won't stand in your way, but I'm asking, please don't shut us out completely." Daniel sat slowly. "If Margaret keeps pushing, if she keeps trying to take Emily—" "She won't," Harold interrupted. "Not if I stop her." Daniel stared out at the city. "I can't promise anything," he said finally. "But if she backs down, if Emily wants to know you someday, I won't stop her." Harold's voice trembled. "That's more than I deserve." The call ended. 2 days later, the final custody hearing began. The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the hallway. Everyone waited for the outcome. The judge addressed the court after a long deliberation. After reviewing all submitted evidence, including the mother's will, the DNA results, and the child's testimony, this court finds sufficient legal and moral grounds to award full guardianship to Mr. Daniel Whitmore, effective immediately. The gavel fell. Emily turned in her seat, eyes wide. Daniel smiled through tears and knelt as she leapt into his arms. Claire watched, her own eyes misty. She had raised Emily like a daughter, and now she was letting her go, not out of loss, but out of love. Later, outside the courtroom, Daniel found Harold standing alone. Margaret was nowhere in sight. "She didn't come?" Daniel asked. "She knew what the outcome would be," Harold replied. "She stayed home." Daniel hesitated, then extended his hand. Harold shook it firmly. "No more war," Harold said. "No more ghosts." Daniel nodded. "Only what Emily needs." That evening, back at Claire's house for the last time as guests, Emily dragged Daniel by the hand to the backyard garden. "You promised we'd plant something together," she said. He knelt in the dirt beside her, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled. "What should we plant?" She held up a tiny heart-shaped seed packet. "These grow into red tulips. Mummy's favorite." Daniel took the spade and dug, Emily dropping the seeds in carefully. They watered them together, then stood silently as the sun dipped low behind the fence. "Do you think Mommy can see us?" Emily asked. Daniel wrapped an arm around her. "I think she never stopped." And as twilight fell, a breeze swept through the garden. The first petal from a blooming tulip fluttered gently to the ground. Weeks passed, and the rhythm of life began to reshape itself around something tender, something new. Daniel's penthouse no longer felt like a sterile fortress of solitude. There were crayons on the marble countertops, juice boxes in the refrigerator, and the soft sound of cartoons drifting from the living room. Emily had made the space her own without trying. Her presence filled the rooms like sunlight. Daniel adapted quickly. Mornings became a rush of hair-brushing, missing socks, and lunchbox checks. Evenings were a mix of math homework, bedtime stories, and drawing sessions. Emily always drew families, hers always with Daniel, Claire, and herself. Sometimes she included a cloud with angel wings above them. "That's Mommy," she'd say. But beneath the new joy, Daniel felt the unspoken weight of adjusting to fatherhood overnight. The guilt of lost years still shadowed him. He found himself watching Emily sleep, memorizing every detail of her face, trying to make up for time that couldn't be replaced. Claire still visited frequently. She helped with the transition, but more than that, she had become family in a new way. Emily loved her fiercely, and Daniel was grateful. They had created something unconventional, but real. One Sunday afternoon, Claire joined them at a quiet park. Emily ran ahead, chasing a squirrel with excited shrieks, her laughter echoing through the trees. Claire turned to Daniel, her expression serious. "I got a call," she said, "from Anna's old lawyer. There's another document." Daniel's heart paused. "What kind of document?" Claire reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. "It's a letter, dated the week before Anna died." He stared at it, reluctant to take it. "She gave it to the lawyer in person," Claire continued, "told him not to send it unless she didn't come back from the hospital." Daniel's fingers trembled as he accepted it. The seal was unbroken, the paper thick with weight. Claire watched him. "You don't have to open it now." But Daniel shook his head. "I want to." He sat on a nearby bench and opened it slowly. The scent of old ink hit him first. Anna's handwriting curled across the page in that familiar way that made his chest ache. "Daniel, if you're reading this, then I didn't make it. And you found Emily, I know you have, because you always kept your promises, even the ones you didn't know you made. I need to tell you one last thing, something I couldn't say before." His eyes scanned the lines, his breath tightening as the words sank in. "Emily was sick once, when she was 3. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to scare you, but the doctors said it might come back. They weren't sure. I don't know what the future holds, Daniel, but I need you to be ready, to be strong, for her." Daniel lowered the letter, his hands frozen. Claire leaned in, alarmed. "What is it?" He looked up, eyes wide with fear. "She might still be sick." Claire turned toward the park path. Emily was still laughing, unaware that her world was about to change again. Daniel barely slept that night. The letter had shaken something loose in him, a deep primal fear he hadn't felt since the day he realized Emily might be his daughter. But this was different. This wasn't about paternity or legal battles. This was about her life. First thing in the morning, he called their pediatrician and scheduled a full examination. Claire met him at the clinic with Emily, who was curious but not afraid. She liked the doctor's colorful scrubs and the stickers they handed out. Daniel tried to stay calm as he explained Anna's letter to the physician. Dr. Levine, a kind-eyed woman in her 50s, listened carefully, nodding as she reviewed Emily's history. "We'll run a full panel," she said. "Blood tests, scans, anything relevant. We'll be thorough." Emily winced at the blood draw but didn't cry. Daniel held her hand the whole time. Afterward, they stopped for ice cream, and Emily seemed entirely unbothered by the ordeal. But Daniel's nerves were unraveling by the hour. 2 days later, the results came in. Dr. Levine invited them into her office. Claire joined them, sitting beside Daniel as he bounced his leg with unconscious anxiety. Emily sat between them, coloring quietly on a clipboard. The doctor closed the door and sat down, folding her hands. "There's something we found," she said gently. "Something we need to monitor very closely." Daniel froze. "There's an abnormality in her blood work," she continued. "A mutation in the same marker that Anna mentioned in her letter. It doesn't mean Emily is sick now, but it could mean a higher risk of developing leukemia." Daniel's vision blurred for a moment. Claire reached for his arm. "What does that mean? What do we do?" he asked, his voice tight. Dr. Levine offered a calm, practiced answer. "Right now it means regular monitoring, monthly tests, a strong focus on immunity and early detection. There's no reason to panic, but we can't ignore it." Daniel nodded slowly, already building a mental checklist. Private care, specialists, research, whatever it took. After the appointment, they returned to the apartment. Emily skipped ahead, oblivious to the storm brewing behind her. Inside, Daniel sat on the couch, staring into nothing. Claire joined him quietly. "She's not sick yet," she said. "But she might be," he replied. "I just found her. I can't—" He stopped himself. The words were too heavy. Claire looked at him. "You can't lose her." Daniel nodded, eyes wet. "She's strong," Claire said. "Like her mother, like you." He turned toward her, his voice cracking. "If anything happens, I don't know if I'll be enough." Claire took his hand. "You won't have to do it alone." Later that night, as Emily slept with her arm curled around a stuffed giraffe, Daniel sat beside her bed, holding the second page of Anna's letter. "If she ever gets sick again," it read, "tell her stories, make her laugh, remind her that love is louder than fear." He brushed a strand of hair from Emily's face, his voice barely a whisper. "I promise, Anna. I'll remind her every day." Over the following weeks, Daniel adjusted to a new kind of vigilance. His home transformed again, this time not with toys and drawings, but with medical notebooks, nutrition plans, and air purifiers in every room. Dr. Levine connected them with a pediatric oncologist who assured them that early detection could change everything. Still, the fear hovered like smoke around every moment of joy. Daniel became hyper-aware of every detail. The faintest sign of fatigue in Emily's face, a sniffle that lasted more than a day, the occasional bruise on her knee, even when it came from innocent play. He tried to hide his worry from her to keep things normal, but she noticed. One evening after dinner, she sat beside him with a serious look. "Are you scared, Daddy?" she asked. Daniel paused, spoon halfway to his mouth. "About what, sweetheart?" "About me," she said, "about the doctor stuff." He set down the spoon and looked her in the eye. "I'm not scared of you. I'm scared for you, because I love you." Emily nodded slowly. "You don't have to be scared. I feel strong." He swallowed the lump in his throat and pulled her close. "You are strong. But even strong people need someone to hold their hand sometimes." "Will you hold mine forever?" she asked. "Always," he whispered. That night, Daniel emailed Dr. Levine again and requested a deeper genetic panel. He couldn't sit still. He needed to know everything, every percentage, every possibility. The next day, Claire surprised them both with a visit and a gift. "I found something," she said, handing Emily a dusty, ribbon-tied box. "Your mom's things, I kept it all in storage." Inside were photographs, letters, and a stack of journals. Emily pulled out a picture of Anna holding her as a baby, both of them smiling, surrounded by yellow flowers. "Mommy looks happy," she said. "She was," Claire replied, "especially when she held you." Daniel found one journal dated the year Anna had left the company. He flipped through the pages slowly. Most entries were ordinary, lists, ideas, moments of doubt. But one entry stopped him cold. "I wanted to tell him today." I had the words. "I walked past his office and nearly went in, but I saw him in a meeting, talking about expansion and partnerships. I knew he had a whole world he was building. And I was terrified I'd tear it down." Daniel stared at the words, heart aching. "She thought I wouldn't want her," he murmured. Claire shook her head. "She thought she didn't deserve to take up space in your life." Emily looked between them, sensing the gravity of the moment. "I think Mommy just wanted to be safe," she said softly. "Sometimes people run when they're scared, but then they find their way back." Daniel pulled both of them into a hug. "She did find her way back," he whispered. "Through you." And for the first time in weeks, the weight in his chest began to lift, just enough to breathe again. The months that followed became a balancing act between the ordinary and the unimaginable. Emily remained healthy, joyful, and full of energy. Her monthly checkups were stable, and the mutation Anna had warned about stayed dormant. Still, Daniel couldn't fully relax. He managed Carrington from a distance, relying heavily on his executive team, choosing instead to prioritize what mattered most: time. One Friday afternoon, Daniel surprised Emily by picking her up early from school. They drove to a countryside retreat 2 hours away, a quiet lake, a cabin, and no cell service. Just them. That night, as a fire crackled in the fireplace, Emily curled on the couch beside him, sketchpad in hand. She drew slowly, intentionally. "Do you ever miss your mommy?" she asked without looking up. Daniel swallowed. "All the time. I think about her every night," she said. "Sometimes I try to remember the sound of her voice, but it's getting fuzzy." He wrapped his arm around her. "I can tell you stories, things she told me, things I remember." Emily looked up. "Like what?" Daniel thought for a moment. "She used to love rainy days. She said it was when the world whispered instead of shouted. And she once told me that loving someone means showing up even when it's inconvenient, even when it hurts." Emily smiled. "I think you're doing that." Daniel kissed the top of her head. "Thanks, kiddo." Back in the city, trouble brewed again. Margaret Caldwell had remained out of sight for months, but silence didn't mean surrender. One morning, Marla showed up at Daniel's office unannounced. "We've got a problem," she said, laying down a folder. "It's a background investigation. Someone's been digging through Anna's life. Her financial records, her health records, even her emails." Daniel stiffened. "Who?" Marla looked grim. "The Caldwells' old law firm. Not Harold. Margaret." "They're looking for leverage," Daniel muttered. "Something to challenge custody again." "They're building a narrative," Marla said. "One that paints Anna as unstable, secretive, and potentially negligent. They're going to argue you were complicit. That this entire custody arrangement was built on hidden evidence." Daniel closed the folder slowly. "They won't stop," he said, "even after the judge's ruling." "No," Marla agreed. "But there's one more thing." She pulled out a slim USB drive. "They found something in Anna's hospital records, something buried in a private clinic's archive." Daniel felt his stomach twist. "What?" Marla hesitated. "A medical file, dated 8 years ago. It mentions a second child." He stared at her. "What are you saying?" Marla exhaled. "Anna might have had twins." Daniel stood slowly, the room tilting around him. "Where's the second child?" "That's just it," she whispered. "There's no record of the baby being discharged, no adoption papers, no death certificate. Daniel's voice dropped. Then where is my other child? And in that moment, the mystery that Anna had taken to her grave cracked wide open. Daniel sat frozen in his office chair, the USB drive clenched in his hand like a detonator. Across the desk, Marla's expression was solemn but steady. "I don't understand," he said finally, his voice a whisper. "How could no one know? How could Anna keep that secret too?" "I don't know," Marla replied, "but someone does. And if the Caldwells found this, they might already be searching." Daniel stood abruptly, moving to the window, staring out at the skyline that had once felt like his kingdom. Now it felt like a maze of shadows and questions. "A second child," he murmured. "A twin. Why would she separate them? Why wouldn't she tell anyone?" "Maybe she had no choice," Marla offered. "Maybe someone else made the decision for her." Daniel turned sharply. "You think the Caldwells took the child?" "I think they had motive," she said. "You said it yourself. They hated the idea of Anna being a single mother. If they knew about the pregnancy, or if they got to the hospital before you even knew it happened, they could have taken one baby and left the other behind," Daniel finished. His hands trembled. "I need answers." That evening, Daniel visited Claire. She was in the kitchen finishing dinner when he arrived, but one look at his face and she turned off the stove without a word. "Something's happened," she said. He told her everything. Anna's file, the missing child, the Caldwell secret investigation. Claire sat down slowly, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Anna never told me she had twins," she whispered. "She didn't tell anyone," Daniel said, "which makes me think someone didn't give her the chance." Claire's expression shifted from stunned to fierce. "If they took that child, Daniel, they need to be held accountable." "I'm not thinking about lawsuits," he said. "I'm thinking about finding my other child." Emily peeked around the corner then, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, can I stay up a little longer?" He opened his arms, and she ran into them, curling against his chest. He looked at Claire over her shoulder. She might have a brother, or a sister. Claire's eyes filled with tears. "And they've been apart all this time." Daniel stroked Emily's hair, his voice low. "I have to find them, whatever it takes." Later that night, after Emily fell asleep, Daniel sat in his study with Anna's journals spread out before him. He searched every page, looking for something, anything he might have missed. And there, near the end of one notebook, written in shaky, rushed handwriting, he found it. "They told me it was for the best. That I couldn't raise two. That one would be taken care of. I didn't sign anything, I didn't agree, but they said it was already done." Daniel's chest tightened. The words blurred through tears. Anna hadn't abandoned the child. She had been robbed, and someone had lied to her face. He looked at the page again and saw one final line, circled in red. They said her name would be Olivia. Daniel's breath caught. His daughter wasn't lost. She had a name, and somewhere she was waiting to be found. Rain streaked the windows of Daniel's car as he sat parked outside the private hospital where Anna had given birth 8 years ago. He hadn't waited for a warrant. He hadn't even told Marla. The page in Anna's journal, they said her name would be Olivia, played over and over in his mind like a drumbeat. He walked into the lobby, heart pounding. The woman at the front desk looked up politely until she recognized him. Her posture stiffened. "I'm here to see the birth records for Anna Caldwell," Daniel said. "June 17th, 8 years ago. I need the attending physician's name, the discharge paperwork, everything." "I'm sorry, Mr. Whitmore," she said, suddenly formal. "That information is confidential." Daniel leaned in, voice calm but unyielding. "Then you can tell the press that the hospital denied access to a father searching for his missing daughter." That made her flinch. She picked up the phone and called a supervisor. 20 minutes later, Daniel sat in a private conference room with an older nurse named Teresa, the only one still working at the hospital from that year. Her hands trembled as she opened a worn file folder. "There's a note here," she said softly, eyes scanning the document. "Baby A, Emily Caldwell. Baby B, female, unnamed, marked for confidential transfer. No signature from the mother, no follow-up contact." Daniel's heart sank. What does confidential transfer mean? Teresa looked up, haunted. Sometimes when families with influence don't want something to be public, arrangements are made, especially when the mother is young, alone. Arrangements like adoption? He asked. She nodded slowly. Private, sealed, no agency listed. Daniel rubbed his temples. There has to be a trail, a name, anything. Teresa hesitated, then reached into her pocket and slid a small, faded sticky note across the table. I shouldn't have kept this, she said, but I wrote it down that day, a name. The man who came to pick up the second child. He didn't sign anything official, but he gave me his card. Daniel picked up the note. Victor Ashbridge, Ashbridge Foundation. He froze. The Ashbridge Foundation was a philanthropic organization tied to old money, known for orphanage funding and quiet adoptions. Margaret Caldwell had served on its board for over 2 decades. Daniel stood slowly, pulse hammering. She gave the child away, he whispered. Margaret, without Anna's consent. Teresa looked down. I always wondered if someone would come looking. Daniel left the hospital in a daze. Back in his car, he called Marla and gave her the name. Within hours, she had the foundation's history pulled, including a list of private adoptions filed under sealed court orders. Only one case matched the timeline. A girl. Born June 17th, registered under the name Olivia Whitman. Adopted by a family in Vermont. Daniel stared at the address. He had an answer. He had a name. He had a daughter. And she was alive. Daniel stood at the edge of a quiet cul-de-sac in rural Vermont, the GPS silently confirming he had arrived. The house was modest, a 2-story colonial with white shutters and a wraparound porch. A tire swing swayed gently in the breeze from an old oak tree. It looked like a picture from a life Daniel had never known how to imagine. He hadn't slept the night before. After Marla confirmed the adoption, he'd spent hours debating what to do next. Show up? Call first? Write a letter? But the need to see her, to know she was real, had driven him here before he had answers. He stepped out of the car and walked up the stone path, each footfall heavier than the last. At the front door he hesitated, hand poised to knock. Before he could, it opened. A woman in her early 50s stood in the doorway, wearing gardening gloves and a confused expression. Can I help you? Daniel cleared his throat. I hope so. My name is Daniel Whitmore. I believe your daughter Olivia may be my child. The woman paled. For a moment neither of them spoke. Then she opened the screen door slowly. Come in. Inside, the home was warm, filled with photos, books, and soft piano music playing from another room. Daniel's eyes moved instinctively to the mantel. Family pictures lined it. And there she was. A girl with dark brown hair and green eyes. A slightly thinner face than Emily's, but unmistakable. The same curious stare, the same smile. Daniel's breath caught. The woman, Sophie Whitman, sat down across from him, removing her gloves with care. We knew this might happen one day, she said. The foundation said the birth mother had changed her mind, that she didn't want contact. She never signed anything, Daniel said, his voice shaking. She never agreed. They took Olivia while she was unconscious, without consent. Sophie closed her eyes. I always wondered, she whispered. She was left at the hospital without a note, no paperwork. We were told it was a special case, that she'd been surrendered discreetly. She has a twin, Daniel added. Emily. She's with me. Sophie looked up, stunned. Twins? Daniel nodded. They were separated at birth. Olivia, she's my daughter, just like Emily. Sophie sat back, visibly shaken. She's everything to us, Daniel. She's our only child. She's loved. She's safe. We're good people. I don't doubt that, Daniel said, his tone soft but firm. But she deserves to know the truth, and her sister. A door opened upstairs and footsteps padded down. Daniel turned just as a girl appeared at the bottom of the stairs. She paused when she saw him. Mom, she asked. Who's that? Olivia stood in the doorway, a book in her hand, her expression curious but cautious. Daniel stood slowly. For a moment he couldn't speak. Then, voice trembling, he said, "Hi, my name is Daniel, and I think I'm your dad." The room fell silent. Olivia stared at Daniel, her eyes narrowing slightly as if trying to solve a puzzle. Sophie rose and moved to her daughter's side, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Olivia," she said softly, "this man, he came here because he believes he's your biological father." Olivia blinked. "My what?" Daniel stepped forward, careful not to seem too eager or too close. "I know this is confusing, and I'm sorry to just show up like this, but I've been looking for you for a long time." Olivia looked between them both, confusion turning to wariness. "Is this a joke?" Sophie knelt beside her. "No, sweetheart, we didn't know either. We were told you were given up for adoption, that your birth mother wanted it that way." Olivia's face shifted. "So, I have a real dad and a mom." Daniel's breath caught. "You had a mother. Her name was Anna. She passed away last year. But you still have family, you have a sister." That made her freeze. "A sister?" Daniel nodded. "Her name is Emily. She's 8, like you. She's your twin." Olivia didn't respond. She just stood there, staring at him, trying to reconcile everything. "Why now?" she asked finally. "Why did it take so long?" Daniel took a slow breath. "Because I didn't know you existed. I only just found out a few days ago. I found a note. Your mum wrote about you. Then we traced the adoption back to here. I promise, if I had known, I would have come sooner." Olivia's shoulders tensed. "So you're just going to take me away now?" The question hit Daniel like a punch. He shook his head. "No, no one's taking you anywhere. I didn't come to change your life overnight. I came to tell you the truth and to ask if you'd want to meet your sister." Olivia looked at Sophie. "Can I?" Sophie hesitated, then nodded. "If you want to." Daniel pulled out a photo from his wallet, one Emily had drawn just last week. It showed 2 girls holding hands under a tree. "She drew this before she knew you were real," he said. "She always said she wished for a sister." Olivia took the drawing, her eyes scanning every line. Her fingers traced the 2 stick-figure girls. "Does she know about me?" Daniel shook his head. "Not yet. I wanted to be sure to ask you first." Olivia looked back at him, eyes wide, voice suddenly small. "Can we meet soon?" Daniel smiled, tears rising. "As soon as you're ready." Sophie wrapped an arm around her daughter, holding her close, and for the first time in her life, Olivia whispered words that made her whole world tilt. "I think I want to meet my family." The following weekend, under a sky streaked with spring clouds, Daniel brought Emily to a quiet botanical garden just outside the city. It was Claire's suggestion, a neutral place, beautiful and calm, somewhere between Vermont and home. Neither girl knew exactly what was coming. Emily wore a yellow dress and clutched her sketchpad. She had asked questions all morning. Why the surprise? Why such a long drive? But Daniel had offered only smiles and vague answers. "She's someone special," he'd said. When they arrived, Olivia and Sophie were already waiting near the koi pond. Olivia stood stiffly, her hands behind her back, her face a storm of nerves and wonder. Sophie gave Daniel a soft nod of reassurance as they approached. Emily ran ahead, then slowed when she saw the girl across the clearing. She stopped completely. Olivia took a cautious step forward. Emily tilted her head. "You look like me," she whispered. Olivia smiled. "You look like me too." They stared for a long moment, neither speaking, as if afraid that words would ruin the magic. Then, without another word, Emily stepped forward and held out her hand. Olivia took it, and the garden seemed to hold its breath. "I'm Emily," she said. "I'm Olivia." Daniel and Sophie watched from a short distance, their hearts in their throats. Claire stood beside them, arms crossed tightly, her eyes glistening. The girls sat on the grass by the water's edge, sharing Emily's sketchpad. Olivia flipped through the pages, laughing softly at the doodles and drawings. "You drew me before you knew me," she said. "I guess I missed you," Emily replied. "Me too." They spent the afternoon exploring the garden together, splashing water at the pond, sharing snacks, whispering secrets like they had known each other forever. As the sun began to dip behind the trees, Daniel walked beside Olivia, his steps slow and deliberate. "I hope this wasn't too much," he said gently. She looked up at him. "It was a lot, but a good lot." He smiled. "Do you want to see her again?" he asked. Olivia nodded. "Yeah, I think I do." "Do you want to see me again?" She hesitated, then reached out and took his hand. "I think I want to know you," she said. "I think I want both." Daniel blinked back emotion. "Then you'll have both." As they walked back to the parking lot, Emily ran up beside them, holding Olivia's other hand. "We're going to be best sisters," she declared. "Like forever," Olivia laughed. Forever sounds good. But as they loaded into their separate cars, neither girl wanted to say goodbye. So Daniel leaned down and whispered into Olivia's ear. "How about next weekend?" She nodded. "Next weekend," she echoed. And just before she closed the car door, she looked back and said almost shyly, "Bye, Dad." Daniel stood frozen, watching the car disappear around the bend. Because for the first time, he was no longer a man who had lost a daughter. He was a father of two. 1 month later, laughter echoed through Daniel's once sterile penthouse. Olivia and Emily chased each other through the living room, giggling, their footsteps soft against the rugs. It was Saturday morning, and the apartment smelled of pancakes and vanilla, Claire's recipe which had become a tradition. Claire flipped pancakes in the kitchen, smiling as the girls danced by. Daniel stood at the edge of the room, leaning on the wall, arms crossed. He still hadn't grown used to the sound of two voices calling him Dad, and maybe he never would. Maybe some miracles were meant to stay a little unbelievable. Okay, he called out. 5-minute break before someone breaks the lamp." The girls collapsed onto the couch in a pile of laughter, their heads close together, their faces glowing with joy. "I want to show her my school next week," Olivia said. "I want to show her my teacher," Emily chimed in. Daniel walked over and knelt between them. "Let's take it one step at a time. We've got forever, remember?" They both nodded in unison. He brushed a strand of hair from each of their faces. "You girls want the same book tonight?" he asked. "Different ones," they both said, then looked at each other and burst out laughing again. Claire placed a plate of pancakes on the table. "Breakfast, before you two turn this place into a jungle." As they ate, Daniel caught Claire's eye across the kitchen. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For believing in Anna, for protecting Emily, for helping me find Olivia. I couldn't have done any of this without you." Claire smiled gently. "They needed you, and you showed up." Later that afternoon, while the girls played on the balcony, Daniel stepped into his office and opened a small wooden box. Inside was Anna's final letter, the hospital note, Emily's first drawing and a photo Claire had recently given him, Anna holding 2 newborns, one swaddled in yellow, the other in blue. He touched the photo gently, his voice low. "I found them, Anna. I found both of them, and I'm going to love them for the rest of my life." The door creaked open behind him. It was Olivia. She held a piece of paper in her hand. "I made something," she said. He took it. It was a drawing of their whole family. 2 girls, a man, a woman with curly hair, Claire, and above them, floating in the clouds, a woman with long dark hair and gentle eyes. "Is that your mum?" he asked softly. Olivia nodded. "She watches over us now," she said. Daniel wrapped her in his arms, heart full. Outside, Emily called out, "Come on, Olivia!" She ran back to play, her laughter trailing behind her like music. And Daniel, watching from the doorway, realized something that he hadn't dared believe before. The past had broken him, but love, messy, unexpected, inconvenient love, had rebuilt him into something stronger, into a father, into a family. forever.